lose Senate seats is a very tough map. And we're seeing that down ballot, a lot of these Democrats are actually really good candidates who have been polling way ahead. So there's a lot of anxiety on the part of Democrats that these poor polls might actually affect these down ballot races. And remember, these down ballot races are the whole thing. So I think there was a lot of anxiety there. I think that, I think he had to get there on his own.
We're looking at coverage from across the world.
I don't know that he was pushed out exactly.
Australia.
I think it was more. Remember, he would have been the oldest president ever by a lot. And, now, and the problem was he was just taking up the news cycle was all about Joe Biden, when in fact the news cycle needs to be all about the guy who was impeached twice, had led an armed insurrection, has 4 criminal cases against him, has been indicted, has been found guilty, is an adjudicated
Vice President Harris
rapist.
is going to run.
If you are if Democrats can get voters focused on Donald Trump, they can win. If we are having a conversation about how old Joe Biden is, then the focus is not on this anti-democracy movement happening in the Republican Party.
I mean, aside from this, we are living through right now an unprecedented period of history. This has never happened before. We had an attempted assassination. We had Joe Biden, well, God bless him. And we have a president running again after he was defeated. Never in the history of the United States has this ever happened. We are living in history right now. Our great-grandkids are going to be reading about this in history class. Oh, yeah, there was an election in 2024 where, the president resigned basically from the campaign and the other guy was shot and he won a landslide election in November. Probably. Wow.
The second Black woman in the Senate ever, first female vice president, woman of color ever. I mean, this is just, she is, quite a good speaker, very smart. And also, remember, she has all these accomplishments. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump, he ran his father's real estate business.
Oh, my God.
Did okay with it. And then, ran for president on a racist lie that Mexicans were rapists.
But when she did go for president, the campaign did not go well. The initial stage of the campaign, she pulled out very early. She was not that popular, let's face it.
So I want to reframe that because I've been thinking a lot about the Democratic primary and why she didn't do as well in the Democratic Party primary.
Because she sucks.
And I have 2 thoughts. One is that,
oh my God.
And I actually think this may benefit her in the general. She was not that lefty. She has all this law enforcement background. She was a DA. She was an AG. She was, and she was a prosecutor for many years, and she prosecuted sex crimes. Ironically, she prosecuted sex crimes. So there's a certain sense in which a lot of Democrats wanted someone more lefty than her. They wanted someone who would, wasn't as involved in policing and that kind of thing. And so I actually think that may help her in the general. Because even now the left has gotten on board because they realize that this is, could be our.
And I mean, let's be honest, now presidential candidates, Kamala Harris, she was a smoke show back in the day, 30 years ago. It's like, oh my God. Hey, you can't lie about
last election.
Can't lie about it.
But I also think that helps her. She's not a far lefty. She's actually pretty centrist. And one of the things
she's not a far lefty. Are you out of your
thank
fucking
you very much
mind?
for being with us. I appreciate your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as we look at pictures of Kamala Harris there on your screen, Niall Stanage is back with me. And it's noticeable how even as we speak, attention seems to be switching very quickly.
Excuse me, she's not a far lefty.
Kamala Harris and a lot
Are
of
you fucking kidding me?
Kamala Harris.
Come on now.
Do you think it's inevitable that
Come on now.
she will be the next candidate?
I'm reluctant to use the
candidate.
word inevitable in the middle of such unprecedented times,
Yeah.
but I think she's the overwhelming favourite, Mark. There's a real challenge. If anyone wants to oppose her, that's a difficult cliff to climb from the start. The incumbent vice president with the endorsement of the outgoing president and with significant institutional support behind her from the Democratic Party. As I was saying to you a short time ago, I think Kamala Harris has vulnerabilities, but she's clearly far and away the favourite to be the nominee.
Because she didn't do well when she was going for president. It was was she the first to pull out? I can't quite remember. But
She certainly pulled out before the Iowa caucuses, which are the first contest. You know, it just didn't really happen for her. I remember at the outset of that campaign talking to someone in California Democratic politics, which is her home base, and this person said to me at the time, Kamala Harris is one of those people who looks so impressive on paper, and she always ends up a little bit underwhelming. That's what happened in that campaign. There were questions around her.
JW says it won't be her. Well,
there was some discord within her
you might be
campaign.
right.
Now, her allies would say
For now it
she's
is.
sometimes
But
held
tomorrow
to a
it could be
different
Michelle Obama.
standard because of her gender and race.
Which,
but it
I
wasn't
mean,
a good
I think
campaign
that would
by
be a
any stretch.
much better way to go for
how
the Democrats.
much agreement do you think exists in the upper echelons of the Democratic Party about a way forward?
I think a lot of agreement exists
I just
that
don't-
it has to be.
Excuse me. I just don't see how they can do that. I mean, of course they can, right? Sort of. But I don't know. I mean, Vice President Harris might be the one. We'll see.
Kamala Harris, I don't think people are. She's just this extra. Actually, go for it. If you're Gretchen Whitmer or you're Gavin Newsom,
Barbara Ann's
do you
texting
really
me and
think
I
that
have
it's
to
worth the
respond
risk
because she's a
going like
redhead.
that?
Well, that's a very good point because you kind of get the feeling that someone like Gavin Newsom probably doesn't want to go right now, and because either because they don't think there's much of a chance, or because they think they'll have a much better chance next time. Is that a feeling?
I think it is. And if you just sort of roll the movie forward, so to speak, let's say
Barbara Ann
Newsom or
says the
Whitmer
Obamas
gets in,
do not
they
support
have
Harris.
to then defeat Kamala Harris. That will divide
Clintons
the
are
party
supporting
even
her,
if they
so,
win.
okay.
So they would then have to reunite the party, and then they would have to beat Mr. Trump in November. If you're Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, who are by political standards still fairly
Thanks,
youthful
Barb.
figures, seems to me to make a lot more sense to wait. Maybe Kamala Harris loses, you're automatically one of the front runners for 4 years hence.
Let's talk just a little bit about Joe Biden, because it is just a matter of hours since he made this decision.
I don't think it's too often we comment on this helicopter. This helicopter is fucking badass. Look at that. You got the Marines there. You got that's a badass helicopter. Sorry, what? Hamster, but we got this thing going on. It's
To make a lot more
helicopter's
sense to
cool.
wait.
I like it.
Maybe Kamala Harris loses, you're automatically one of the front runners for 4 years hence.
Let's talk just a little bit about Joe Biden, because it is just a matter of hours since he made this decision. He will have found that very difficult to do, wouldn't he?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think for a man whose life has been politics and whose life's ambition has been to assume the presidency of the United States. Remember, Mark, Joe Biden first ran for president in 1988.
1988, yeah. But I mean, I don't wish any harm on anyone or nothing like that. But I mean, I think it was clear to everyone that Joe just didn't have the chutzpah anymore. He's old. That's what happens when we get. I'm 60, right? I'm going to be getting really old shortly. My dad's 89, right? The older you get, you run out of juice. That's all there is. Some people get lucky, and they keep everything up, going full strength till they pass. But in the case of President Biden, just that ain't happening. Ain't happening. We all slow down.
That's a while ago.
Really?
And he ended
And
up
he slowed down a
ousted,
lot.
Your British listeners or viewers may remember, ousted in a plagiarism scandal after he borrowed a Neil
1988,
Kinnock speech without
That's right,
attribution.
Look,
but
balloons.
in any event,
Yeah.
the point is, it has been his life's quest to get this office that he now holds, and he has now been, in essence, forced to give it up.
Yeah, and there's no question, we should just make clear, that he's going to carry on as president, because of course there were questions. The Republicans were
He's not going to resign the
throwing
presidency.
out this
No, that's not what's going on.
Well, if he's not fit to stand for the next 4 years. He's not fit to stand for the next 4 months. I mean, was that ever going to gain traction, do you think?
I don't think that President Biden himself was ever going to step aside before his term was up. I think he would find that too humiliating. He would become the only president since Richard Nixon to resign, not the company you particularly want to be in if you're president of the United States. So I think that was never really going to happen. But I do think it's a potentially politically useful argument for Republicans to make, because of course then you tar Kamala Harris with the idea that
look at the senator from Pennsylvania. This guy, holy shit, easy. That's a big man. Wow, holy crap, and not as crazy Democrat as we were hoping for. You know what I'm saying?
Really capable of doing the job anymore.
The concept of a mini primary. We've got 4 weeks. You can probably squeeze in 2, maybe even 3 debates. Of the 20 possible candidates whose names I've heard thrown around, you only need maybe 3 or ideally, I'd say 5 to join the race. So you have a half dozen people barnstorming the country, doing the talk news circuit, the Sunday morning talk shows, the late night comedians giving speeches. And we're looking for somebody to catch fire, to catch lightning in a bottle, the way Obama did back in 07 and 08.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I hope it is Kamala Harris. She's obviously the inside track. That's the easiest course. But we cannot presume that. And we made a terrible mistake a year ago, the Democratic Party just all lining up behind Biden when the American people were saying he is too old.
President Obama was a unique situation. Very the stars came together. The constellations lined up when he was running for president. There's no question about that. I don't think there's any way you can look at that differently. No. He wasn't just another candidate. He was Obama. It's a different ballgame.
To be an effective president, we should have listened to them then. We've got a chance to fix that mistake now. We better not make that mistake again by simply anointing.
Look at this tall. You see that? Look at the tall man over there. Holy Jesus. They growing big here somewhere. Oh, my God. Look at that guy. What is he, about 6'8"? Holy crap. Good for you, man. Wow.
Chance to fix that mistake now. We better not make that mistake again by simply anointing Kamala Harris and assuming that the American people want her to be the person who's best suited to defeat Donald Trump.
Okay.
But don't you risk then division and disunity with a contest? And we know that voters don't tend to vote for divided parties.
Yeah, well, look, it would be one thing if we were ahead in the game and we could try and run out the clock. But when you're behind, you actually want to overturn the chessboard. You want some chaos and uncertainty. But because also along with that comes excitement. And I can't think of anything more exciting than a genuine horse race for the next 4 weeks. It'll suck all the air out of the room for Trump.
Well, I'm sure it's exciting for you. God damn. We're talking about our country here, bro. Come on now.
The Republicans, everybody will be focused on the incredible bench.
It's not a fucking horse race. It's our country. We would appreciate a chance to keep it going, if you don't mind.
Of talented young people that the Democratic Party has. We just need to make sure a few of them throw their hats in the ring and that this doesn't just become a coronation. I think I personally would be strongly opposed to any attempt to just anoint Kamala Harris, assume she's the best candidate. I need to hear the American people. I want to see what the national polls show, for example, and in the swing states over the next week or two.
Do you think she would have, this is what I guess you're suggesting, that she would have more legitimacy if she did win a contest?
I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about. Are you going to be the person who walks in to the vice president's office and says, excuse me, Vice President Harris, we're not going to run you? Are you fucking kidding? Are you? Come on now.
Yes.
Yes, and to her credit, actually, just in the last hour, she said the right words. Like she wants to go out and earn the nomination. That's what's important. Yeah. She will have a better chance of beating Trump if she's the nominee, if she's genuinely perceived to have earned it rather than just having it handed to her.
She has no chance of beating Donald Trump. The Democrat Party knows that. That's why they're playing these games. Come on now. Come on.
Without a competitive process, I actually think the lack of a competitive process and trying to force this upon all Democrats, that is actually what would be divisive. What would bring us all together is an exciting process where we have a lot of choices, and then we get to see what the polls say, and who raises the most money and who's drawing the biggest crowds. I remember what it was like with Obama back in 2008. We need to find someone who can.
You're comparing Obama, who was a unique candidate, a unique, unprecedented candidate, to this. Come on, bro. What are you talking about?
Capture that kind of excitement. I'm very open to the idea that that's Kamala Harris.
Oh, Jesus,
but it could well be one of the other candidates, and I hope some of them throw their hat in the ring so we can have a real horse race here.
No. Oh, what did you say?
The polls don't look good for the Democrats at the moment, and I appreciate that is one of the reasons why Joe Biden has been persuaded to stand back here. But the polls don't look good, particularly in some of those swing states where it looks as if Donald Trump has the momentum. Do you think a new candidate has a chance at all of pulling that back?
No.
Absolutely. In fact, Donald Trump, once Joe Biden steps aside, Donald Trump is one of the weakest, most beatable presidential candidates in history. His approval versus disapproval rating is negative.
Who in the fuck is this guy? I really would like
Donald Trump. Once Joe Biden steps aside, Donald Trump is one of the weakest, most beatable presidential candidates in history.
Oh my God, where do these people come from? You believe that, guys? The weakest, most beatable candidate in fucking history. Oh my God. Jesus. God bless America. What the fuck is this dude talking about? He has no idea. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Let me find the fucking way. No, I can't believe what I'm hearing here.
His approval versus disapproval rating is negative 12%, one of the
Bullshit.
lowest of any presidential candidates. He's deeply unpopular. The only thing that was masking that, and nobody was paying attention to it, is Joe Biden was 18 points underwater. So I think right now the race is an absolute toss-up.
No, it's not.
You're going to see that in the polls. And the key, though, is we need to find a candidate who can do.
This is Sky News in
needs
Australia.
To be better than just better than Trump.
I don't know
really
who this fucking
who's got the vision and the ideas,
is.
and who can catch fire. And really get people excited to vote for that person. Because I don't just want to beat Trump. I want to thrash him. I want to keep the Senate. I want to win the House. And we have the potential to do that, but not if we just anoint somebody. We've got in a month to do something unprecedented.
I mean, I know he's speaking for his side.
Since
he's
1970, by the way, it used to be every presidential election up till 1970. The parties didn't determine the nominee until the convention. So,
what the fuck is this guy smoking? The parties didn't determine the candidate before the. What the fuck? Come on. Come on now. Jesus Christ. Get the fuck out of here.
There's lots of precedent for this, actually, but certainly unprecedented in the last 50 years or so.
Damn. Oh, my God.
I mean, it's very clear that Joe Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris. There's endorsements from elsewhere. Do you fear that it could be a coronation?
Excuse me. Excuse me. I remember Godfather, where Kate and Michael said, now who's being naive, Kate? It's like, come on now. Come on.
It could be, to use the phrase, a stitch up.
Yes, and I think that would be a terrible mistake. Not, again, because I have any negative views about Kamala Harris, but because we made that mistake a year ago. And I think certainly the donors that I know.
I'm sure in this guy's bubble, Trump sucks. But come on now. Come on now. You get 30,000 people in Benton Harbor, Michigan. In fucking New Jersey, you get 100,000 people at a rally. Don't sit there and tell me. Don't piss down my leg, man, and tell me it's raining. That's bullshit. Come on.
Also the grassroots activists and all of us are, I'd say we break into thirds. A third of the people don't think Kamala Harris can win and at all. A third of them very open, want to see the polls, and a third of them strong.
I think Kamala Harris is perfectly capable of winning. It's not Kamala Harris. It's your goddamn policies. Come on now. It's not the person running. It's your whole fucking platform. What are you talking about? Sheeper, criminy.
Support her. But
Jiminy
the reality is nobody knows right now because any polls done about theoretical and potential candidates aren't worth anything.
God.
We actually now,
there's
it's
Biden
the
and
polls in the next couple
Zelensky.
weeks.
Yeah, goody. I heard Trump called Zelensky, right? You heard that. Yeah. It's like, hey, let's figure something out here. Yeah.
Okay, Whitney, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on once again. Thank you. I've hurried through that because I just want to show you this live picture from outside the Vice President's official residence in Washington. Someone, well, there we are. Another endorsement. Someone, we don't know who it is.
Yeah, it's not
seems to
not
have
the Vice President
written a
herself.
homemade sign saying Kamala.
It's your policies, bro. Come on now.
That's outside Kamala Harris's official residence in Washington.
All right.
Good evening. It's 10 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. I'm Mark Austin, live from Washington on what can only be described as a momentous day that will certainly reshape the battle for the US presidency in November and could, of course, also have a decisive impact on the future of the most powerful country on earth. President Biden today announced that he will not seek to be re-elected for a second term after days of increasing
and God bless
pressure
him,
from within.
No antipathy toward the president. He's an old man. He's just kind of run out of gas. That's what happens when you get old. I mean, at his age, he's in his 80s. Nothing against him. I hope he retires and lives a long time playing with the grandkids, whatever, sniffing hair, whatever he does, right? It's not the thing. It's not the thing. It's not the person running. It's the policies these people want to push. Whether it's Kamala Harris, the vice president, or someone else, it's the same shit. Cutting off, well, I don't want to get too crazy. Go ahead.
In his own party. It was prompted rather by that disastrous performance in the first television debate with Donald Trump. This weekend, then, 37 or so Democrat members of Congress had publicly called on him to go as that series of gaffes combined with his very frail appearance during a number of appearances.
Well, he's an old man.
A third.
He's an old man.
COVID for Biden.
Nothing wrong with that. We all get old.
Serious concerns about his ability to serve 4 more years as president. Well, coming up, we'll get the full reaction to the president's announcement. That will be over the coming hour. But it is worth reading what is now an historic statement in full. And here it is. It came in the form of a letter addressed to my fellow Americans. And it says, over the past 3.5 years, we've made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation.
Oh, my God.
In lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided...
Hate to nitpick here, but I'm gonna, because that's why I'm here. And that's why we're here listening to each other. Obamacare, when President Biden was vice president, was supposed to fix the whole goddamn thing. Why is there any possibility of having a problem with healthcare? It's already fixed, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Oh, wait, excuse me. What? Oh, evil white men. Is that it? Nazis and shit.
Critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today.
We got this Irish fuck coming in here saying
none of this
about
could have been done without you, the American people.
funny.
Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. And then the crucial paragraph. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interests of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term.
I mean, that's fair enough. You know, that's, that's reasonable. Yeah. Okay.
On to say, I will speak to the nation later in the coming week. He'll speak in more detail about that decision. He goes on, for now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me re-elected.
Well, I mean, night vision goggles, all this democracy shit goes out the window when they start talking about smortion, because smortion is now a democratic decision with the people of the states where everybody lives. Democracy. Oh, the Supreme Court is ruining this one. No. They actually gave democracy back to the people with respect to that decision. Oh my God. Go on.
I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work, and let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me.
You mean half of the American people? Actually, about 30%, because it's all the women's.
He says,
single women.
I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America cannot do when we do it together. We just have to remember.
Unless Donald Trump is the president. Is that right? I mean,
we are the United States of America.
Not really.
And he also then tweeted separately and endorsed Kamala Harris as the next candidate. First
Kevin, I don't think. Excuse me, sir. I don't think Vice President Harris has a fucking snowball's chance in hell of winning at this point. Had they run her a year ago, things would be different. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Harris is going to draw the vote of the radical, butch, lesbian, freaking weirdo lefty types. She's not going to get mom and dad, especially mom, making dinner tonight or helping serve dinner with her kids and her family in her freaking house in the good old fly country, USA, flyover country. And everybody's going to say, wow, it's because she's a woman. She's black. No, it's because your policies suck. It's just that simple. You could run fucking anyone. It's the same thing. Your policies are horseshit. Doesn't matter if you're black or a chick or whatever. That doesn't matter. See, that's what the lefties don't understand. Well, I think they do. Somebody does. But they're still going to go with that fucking attack method. Well, you're just not going to vote for her because she's a woman and she's black and everything. No. I'm not going to vote for Biden because of the same goddamn problem. The policies. Doesn't matter who's running the fucking show. It's the same horseshit. But then again, why do you care what I think? I mean, I just did. Fucking drunk.
This was the last day we saw Joe Biden in public. A faltering
Joe Biden
facing increasing questions about his fitness for office. He cut short a campaign trip to Nevada on Wednesday following a COVID diagnosis. It now transpires this was a president leaving the presidential race.
Yeah.
From the seclusion of his weekend beach house here in Rehoboth Beach, he's posted a letter on X. It states, while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. It was a TV.
Well, I mean, she's black enough. Okay. She's black enough.
Debate with Donald Trump that prompted his demise.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if
a stumbling performance caused.
Mystery Man says she's strong and independent. You go, girl. And she got to her position due to How did that happen? Excuse me? What? Because she's really that smart, or she could... I'm not even going to say it. She's the vice president, but I think you know what I'm saying, you know?
Fear amongst Democrats that his frailty would cost them the election.
And a bad night.
Defiantly, Joe Biden resisted increasing calls for him to step down.
He just had a really bad cold.
But as he continued campaigning, senior Democratic figures warned him he would likely lose the White House to Donald Trump, and the party could lose the Senate and House of Representatives with it. In pulling out of the race, Joe Biden has endorsed the woman he chose as vice president.
They will.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. has been America's 46th and oldest president.
What is the message?
And he was vice president for 8 years. What's that?
And we say, we'll let it continue to happen here in this place.
A voice at the heart of U.S. politics for 5 decades. A face familiar to Americans for so many years.
Really?
His journey to Washington began here, 2446 North Washington Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania. A modest upbringing that he'd cling to. Scranton Joe. It was the working class man
Lunchbox Joe
image he used to propel himself upwards.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
Joe
how are
Biden's
you?
my name.
It would be quick at the start, elected to the Senate in Washington, aged just 30.
Joe Biden! Joe Biden!
But the rise would then be slow, nearly 4 decades, and 2 failed presidential bids to reach that highest office.
I'm going to put my clothes in the dryer. I'll be right
Biden's
back.
departure complicates the Democrat succession
God.
with November in mind. Not to mention the 5 months left in the White House, with business unfinished, not least in the Middle East. For all Biden wants an exit untarnished, the timing and circumstances jeopardize the legacy of a lame duck president. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
And James joins me live now. First of all, it is a historic moment, a serving president being forced to quit a future race.
Yeah, end of an era, Mark. I mean, Joe Biden is one of America's oldest politicians. He is a firm part of the political establishment here. Senator, a man who ran for president in the past, was vice president, of course, through many years, a very active vice president on foreign policy, known around the world, domestically very important. While he was in the number 2 job, Barack Obama lent very heavily on him. Famously, he ran in 2020 on the back of the riots of white supremacists, styled himself as the one man who could beat Donald Trump and won power. He was the stability candidate, a bridge back to a more traditional style, a more calm style of politics in the United States after the turbulence of the Trump years. So he has been front and center of the American and world consciousness in the political landscape. And of course, latterly, this chapter has been almost a Shakespearean tragedy. There have long been questions about Joe Biden's age and ability to do the job, suitability for office.
That's not because it's Joe Biden. It's because people get old. People run out of gas, man. Come on.
That came to a head, of course, in that debate.
I can go to the live part of this.
U.S. correspondent.
Get over this encomium of bullshit.
We did it. We did it, Joe.
There she is.
It was the viral video which confirmed the Biden-Harris ticket was heading for the White House. 4 years on, President Biden is now lining up behind his running mate.
Yes, it's genuine, Michelle.
59-year-old Harris to become America's first female president.
We beat Donald Trump once and we're going to beat him again.
Well, we've never invested in campaign with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. So I'm excited to see, and I know the money is going to be ramping up because I'm already hearing from donors who had been waiting on.
No, I mean, you're right, Mystery Man. Yeah, people get old. Not everybody loses their shit, understandably. I can speak from my own experience. My father, 89, got nothing left, right? You know, some people, they're vigorous and sharp as a tack till they fall over, and die. But some people don't. The longer you live, the more chances you are to get some brain worms or some shit. And you just don't think as much as... I mean, I can even tell with myself. I'm only 60, but it's like I'm just not as sharp as I was, right? I mean, I'm not, incapable, but not as sharp as I used to be. I mean, it's a reality we all have to live with. Even if I, don't keel over until, when I'm 99 or something, and I still have all my brain cells working and shit, I'm still fucking old. Plus, you got the young people with different and new ideas to bring in, and all we got here are these two old motherfuckers. Sorry. Go on
the sidelines, but they're ready to come back in.
Harris had led her own presidential campaign in 2020.
I'm running for president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
who can I blow? Any way to
it
win.
was short-lived, but enough to convince Biden to pick her as his running mate.
Mm-hmm.
It was this grilling of Brett Kavanaugh, a Trump appointee to the Supreme Court.
Yes or no?
Well, is there a person you're talking about?
I'm asking you a very direct question, yes or no?
That propelled Harris, then a senator,
look at her,
into
so
the
serious.
national spotlight. She was, supporters said, forensic, ferocious, and a breath of fresh air. Her upbringing had always marked her out. The daughter of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, she was a long-standing glass ceiling smasher. In her home state of California, Harris became the first black person to serve as Attorney General. Then the big one, America's first female vice president. But in office...
Yeah, Michelle, Biden dropped out of the presidential race today. So, in case you missed that.
Even in her own party, have viewed her as a political liability, unable to assert herself or her policies.
And there is a direct nexus between where we are on this subject and elections.
Mm-hmm.
But abortion and the overturning of the constitutional right to choose has given Harris a golden political opportunity.
Again, that's fucking propaganda. That is not true. It just goes back to the states where people can vote on it, like Kansas or whatever. If you want some abortion in your state, everybody can vote on it. It's a problem. My democracy. God damn it.
If she becomes the presidential nominee, it could help her win votes in key constituencies. Others in the Democratic Party, though, favour an open nominating process. California Governor Gavin Newsom is a name on some shortlists. And Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, could appeal to swing voters in blue wall states. For now, though, Harris seems to be the most likely pick. She would have among the toughest and certainly the shortest presidential campaigns ahead. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
Mm-hmm.
Let's join our correspondent David Blevins, who is at the White House this evening. And David, first of all, this will have been a very difficult decision for Joe Biden to have taken.
Yes, effectively signaling the end of half a century of service in American politics. But just the latest of 8 days, it has to be said, that have completely redefined the race for the White House. I think the announcement this afternoon has swollen the number of tourists on Pennsylvania Avenue, clearly keen for a selfie with the White House behind them at such a momentous moment. And that week that changed America began with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, rising bloodstained from the platform, imploring his followers to fight, fight, fight. At his first campaign rally since the shooting last night, he told them he had taken a bullet for democracy, and then went on to mock the disarray among the Democrats. He said they don't know who their candidate is. We don't know who their candidate is, and that's a problem. And against their celebration of his survival at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, we had Joe Biden isolated politically here in Washington by nearly 40 Democratic members of Congress, expressing concern about his health and publicly calling for him to go, and isolated physically by COVID in his beach house in Delaware with the First Lady Jill Biden, where at 1:45 Eastern time today, that's 6:45 p.m. in the UK, he informed his advisors that he had taken the decision to step down. He'd spoken previously with Kamala Harris, the Vice President, and I suppose that now shifts the focus to her, because Kamala Harris...
He's not stepping down as president. He's still the president. He's just stepping down from Now, Barbara Ann sending me some stuff from RFK.
Actually facing our country are never addressed. The biggest of these, perhaps, is the national debt. This is now $34 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
The service on that debt alone is now greater than our military budget. Within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that we collect in taxes will go to servicing that debt. Within 10 years, 100%. This is not sustainable. President Biden, President Trump offer no solutions. President Biden on his webpage has no policy issues addressing this or any other policy.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. MGTOW. Oh my God. What are you doing here, bro?
Is front runner, it would seem, to be.
By the way, MGTOW, I found some beer called Outlaw at the Walmart, but it was like a 24 pack, and I didn't want to make that commitment, sir. So sorry about that.
On the ticket for the Democrats in November. She has the endorsement of the president, Joe Biden. She has the endorsement of a former president, Bill Clinton. But she does not yet have the endorsement of former President Barack Obama or former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, other significant figures within the Democratic Party. So we are coming to the end, I think, of 8 tumultuous days in U.S. politics. And we're still 4 months from the election. The one thing we can say is that the race for the White House is never dull.
I mean, he's Irish, so maybe he can't say tumultuous in Ireland.
That's
but I'm a
absolutely
leprechaun.
Right, David. Just on the sort of logistics of Joe Biden, he's in Delaware, I understand. I'm not sure when he's going to come back to the White House, but he's going to stay on. Let's be clear about.
I was going to do a stream with Goodfella, but we'll have to do it next week. This is there's too much excitement going on here.
Staying on as president for
Godfather of Ramadi is here,
effectively till January.
Yes, I think we're guessing at the moment that he will return here to Washington early in the week. He says he will address the nation at some point. We know he's scheduled to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and that meeting is going ahead. But we don't know an awful lot beyond that, apart from the fact that he is determined now to protect his legacy by finishing his presidency well, which is what many senior Democrats were calling upon him to do. But that will raise many questions. Even before this announcement today, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, had already expressed his view that if Joe Biden bowed out of the election, he needed to bow out of the White House altogether. Because in his opinion, he said if Joe Biden isn't fit to run for another 4 years, he isn't fit to govern for another 4 months. And I think that is a question that will linger for many people, because the United States really has been dealing with an incredible amount of political drama in recent days, and it's not over yet.
David, thanks very much indeed. Let's cross straight to the west coast of the United States now to speak to our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, who is in Los Angeles. And Martha, clearly a lot of attention now on Kamala Harris, but the way the Democrats handle all this going forward becomes very important now.
Yeah, we could be on the brink, Mark, of a historic moment, of course, potentially a run for America's first female president. Logistically, Kamala Harris makes a lot of sense for the Democratic Party. She's already surrounded by the Biden-Harris infrastructure. She could inherit immediately that donation money from the Biden-Harris campaign. President Biden.
No, I'm not slamming this little half ginger over here. But can you imagine they getting so excited about, say, Tulsi Gabbard being the first female president of the United States? Anyone? No? Really? Is that what they would do? Oh, no, it's only because of...
Biden could instruct his delegates to vote for Kamala Harris. So logistically, she makes a lot of sense. But I was speaking to a Republican strategist just last week, of course, at the Republican National Convention, when clearly there were lots of questions already about President Biden's political future. And he was saying, remember, within great parts of America, Kamala Harris will be viewed as interchangeable with President Biden. She is number 2 in an administration which has very, very low polling numbers, is lagging behind Donald Trump on almost all metrics. She's also the border czar at a time when America has a major immigration crisis. So she's not necessarily the perfect candidate, but it comes back to what President Biden always says, which is judge me against the alternative and not the almighty. And he clearly thinks that she has enough to...
I would like to see who is the perfect candidate, little lassie. Who would that be? Call some names out. Let's hear that. No, not going to happen today.
Veil over Donald Trump. So I think
Donald
she is
Trump,
now
so
clearly
evil.
the most obvious
He's a
frontrunner
Nazi.
for the Democratic
God.
Party's nomination. And I think now attention will turn to who Kamala Harris may pick for her running mate. I think it is likely, if she does get the nomination, to be a governor, perhaps someone like Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear, who's very popular in Kentucky. Perhaps.
Oh my God, you're so evil, I see. And that's why you're the master wrench on every channel. Thank you.
Perhaps even Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. How historic would that be, potentially having two women on a presidential ticket? But of course,
that would be a fucking nightmare, wouldn't it? Really? Gretchen Hitler? Get the fuck out of here. What?
There are lots of questions, lots to work out. For
what about Nikki Haley? What about Tulsi Gabbard? What about Carrie Lake? You want a woman on the ticket? We can do that. So why are we doing this? We know why we're doing it. Oh my God. See, we got to cover for these people. I mean, if you vote against her, she's a woman and shit and stuff. Oh my God. And she's also black. Oh my God. Jesus, God almighty. Stevie Wonder could read this playbook, people. Come on now. Come on now.
The Democratic Party in the coming days.
Yeah, and in terms of her weaknesses, are there concerns within the Democratic Party?
She get blowjobs to get ahead?
Last time she ran,
nothing like that.
For president, in which the campaign did not go at all well, and she was forced out of that campaign, or she withdrew from that campaign very early. Are there concerns about how she will go down with the voters?
Yeah. That's why the girls like these thin beer.
She's not a particularly good politician, Mark.
Oh my
she
God,
rose to
you hate
prominence,
women, don't
as
you?
I was saying in my piece.
Not really, no.
Grilling of the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh at the time she was running for Senate. She then took a brief run for the presidency herself. It was a very short-lived campaign.
She was a senator from California.
And up until sort of
well, God damn it.
Ago,
she's qualified.
Even by some within her own party as being a major political liability. She's failed to assert herself, particularly on the immigration. Some people are saying that President Biden sold her down the river somewhat with some very tough political briefs, but she's not seen as having flown in this role as vice president. One brief bright spot for Kamala Harris has been the overturning of Roe versus Wade, the overturning of the constitutional right to choose. She's really seen abortion as something that she can campaign on. She's been doing this.
Okay, little ginger here. Roe versus Wade was never part of the Constitution. Okay, it wasn't a constitutional right. It was a decision by the Supreme Court that said it was. And the current Supreme Court, just a couple of years ago, said, nah, it's not in the Constitution, guys. So, democracy. People in the states can vote. Kansas wants that, Lawrence, Kansas up there with all those fucking hoes at UK. All right. Other states, Texas, Missouri, we don't want that. That's democracy, sweetie. But of course, you don't understand that. Because what you really think in your head is democracy means I get what I want. It's not the way it works. Are you sure you like democracy? Just saying.
Tour crisscrossing the United States, specifically appealing for people to vote on the issue of abortion. And that's being viewed as having been quite effective. Abortion was something that brought particularly women to the polls in vast numbers in the 2022 midterm election. So I think that's something,
exactly wrong.
If she becomes the presidential nominee, that she will really focus on. That is an issue that she believes she can win votes.
In case you newcomers didn't already know, Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. Just saying.
Key swing states on.
Now we got Kamala. Yeah, goody.
And just finally, Martha, in the key swing states that you've been talking about, or we've been talking about, Trump does seem to have momentum. We were in Pennsylvania.
Goddamn right he has momentum.
Just earlier last week for 2 or 3 days in a county called Bucks County, which the Democrats have been winning. But it is really 50-50. And the people we spoke to said the momentum seems to be with the Republicans, seems to be with Donald Trump. I just wonder how worried the Democrats are about finding any candidate who could close the gap on Donald Trump.
No one can.
Yeah, I think that is the problem, Mark. There is no obvious perfect candidate. In fact, there's no one really who you look at and think they could do vastly better than Kamala Harris in the current political landscape. You were mentioning the polling there in those swing states, and I think the problem was after that debate 3 weeks ago with President Biden, Americans couldn't unsee or unhear what they'd seen and heard from President Biden. And it means that we saw this sudden surge in momentum for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Those latest polling numbers showing Donald Trump leading President Biden, as it was at the time, in 7 key swing states. So there is a huge political mountain to climb for Kamala Harris. But I think some within the Democratic Party are looking at her and thinking perhaps she offers opportunities, appealing to black voters, which is a key constituency, voters of colour, and appealing to women as well, as I was mentioning before, on abortion, that perhaps she does give them an edge over President Biden in some of those swing states on those issues.
Yeah. Keep believing what you want to believe. That's fine.
Martha, thank you very much.
Have good with
indeed.
it. Have a good time.
Kellner over there on the west coast of the United States on a momentous day in American politics. Let's just have a look at some of the reaction to this decision by Joe Biden to step down.
Let's see. As all the time, you are correct.
Donald Trump, who has said on his Truth Social website, crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. He goes on, all those around him, including his doctor and the media, knew that he wasn't capable of being president, and he wasn't. And now look what he's done to our country with millions of people coming across our border, totally unchecked and unvetted, many from prisons, mental institutions, and record numbers of terrorists. He goes on, we will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done.
Yeah. Brandon is he loves his iced tea, not the other tea. Oh, my God.
Quickly, and he ends with capital letters, make America great again. Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, said on X, which used to be Twitter, Joe Biden has been the worst president in my lifetime, and Kamala Harris has been right there with him every step of the way. Over the last 4 years, she co-signed Biden's open border and green scam policies that drove up the cost of housing and groceries. She owns all of these failures, and she lied for nearly 4 years about Biden's mental capacity, saddling the nation with a president who cannot do the job.
Hey,
he goes on, President Trump and I are ready to save America. Whoever's at the top of the Democratic ticket, bring it on. In contrast, former President Barack Obama said this: Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Today, we've also been reminded again that he's a patriot of the highest order. We will be navigating uncharted waters in the days ahead, but I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. Interestingly, not endorsing Kamala Harris at the moment. What about former US President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary? We join millions of Americans in thanking President Biden for all he has accomplished, standing up for America time and again, with his North Star always being what's best for the country. We are honored to join the president in endorsing Vice President Harris, and will do whatever we can to support her. Now, a key figure in all this, former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Oh my God.
Said this: President Joe Biden is a patriotic American who has always put our country first. His legacy of vision, values, and leadership make him one of the most consequential presidents in American history. With love and gratitude to President Biden for always believing in the promise of America and giving people the opportunity to reach their fulfillment. God bless America with Joe Biden's greatness and goodness. That is a key figure in urging President Biden to stand down there. Nancy Pelosi. What about Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said, I respect President Biden's decision and I look forward to us working together during the remainder of his presidency. I know that, as he has done throughout his remarkable career, President Biden will have made his decision based on what he believes is in the best interests of the American people. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on X, working with Joe Biden saw firsthand his love for America and dedication to service. Our partnership has led to significant achievements, including AUKUS, that's the pact between Australia, the US, and the UK, steadfast support for Israel and joint efforts in defending our people from Houthi threats. And he went on to say, I wish him all the best. I just got a statement as well from Hunter Biden here, saying that for my entire life, I've looked at my dad in awe. How could he suffer so much heartache and yet give so much of whatever remained of his heart to others, not only in the policies he passed, but in the individual lives he's touched. Over a lifetime, I have witnessed him absorb the pain of countless everyday Americans who he's given his personal phone number to because he wanted them to call him when they were hurting, when their last hopes were slipping through their hands. That unconditional love has been his North Star as a president, and as a parent, he is unique in public life today in that there is no distance between Joe Biden, the man, and Joe Biden, the public servant of the last 54 years. And he goes on, I'm so lucky every night I get to tell him I love him and to thank him. I ask all Americans to join me tonight in doing the same. Thank you, Mr. President. I love you, Dad. That the latest in a long line of statements we have had in reaction to all this. That one from Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. And there's also been many other tributes to Joe Biden, but equally those responses from the leadership of the Republicans, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, who are very critical of Joe Biden. Let's
and they're
to,
Nazis.
Martha Kellner, who's
they're both Nazis.
In Los Angeles. And well, Martha, this could all move very quickly, couldn't it, in terms of Kamala Harris and what happens next?
Yeah, and I think it's within the Democratic Party's interest that this does happen.
You got blood on your face.
Biden is the
kicking your can all over the place. That's what Trump should have.
Sitting president has dropped out of the race.
We will rock you.
Interest that they have an heir apparent assume that position as the presidential nominee as soon
Lee
as
Greenwood,
possible.
you know,
It could
God
happen
bless.
very quickly
We
indeed.
will
I
rock
think
you
it's
with
interesting
blood
that
on
so
my
far
face.
no
Come
major
on now.
donors have rallied around a candidate, an alternate candidate to Kamala
What
Harris.
are we
And as I
doing
was saying,
this is the ticket that they said they were going to support. And people are not without the right to say, hey, I want to jump in, I want to try. So we'll see where people fall. There are a lot of people, a lot of names, a lot of amazing Democratic electeds who clearly have an interest in being president of the United States. They're more than welcome to throw their name in and their hat in the ring and have a conversation with the voters and the donors and see where that lands. But it probably ends up that it's better if we are united and a unity ticket, and we go ahead and make sure that the most important thing happens, which is that Donald Trump is not elected president again.
No,
for
that's
4
the
years
most
in this
important thing,
country.
is it? All right, sweetie. Because you abortion.
We've just been talking about the
They got a
polls,
uterus.
the latest
Is
polls
that it?
from the swing states.
You can't control
and
yourself
so
when it comes
forth,
to
and
big
they
hot
don't
beef
look
injections.
good.
Oh my
What
God.
is interesting is that Kamala Harris, a poll I saw yesterday, Kamala Harris
Single
is 2
issue
points
voters,
behind
man.
Donald
That's
Trump
fucking dangerous
in a sort of
shit.
head-to-head matchup, as was, I should say now, Joe Biden, 2 points. So there's not much difference there, but there is this polling deficit in the swing states. How worried are you about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the polling has not been on our side right now. I think it's a shame that the administration did not spend some time of the past 4 years.
Yeah, okay, here's the deal, sweetie. I hate to say it. My democracy. Not everyone is going to believe the same as you. Do you understand what you're asking for? No, of course.
Really introducing the vice president
Tail
to the
gunners
American
here. Hello,
public.
Tail.
There are a lot of people who truly believe she is a really super lefty from San Francisco, which could not be further from the truth of her politics. So this is a time for America to get to know really who she is, what she is about, why she should be the person to lead this country for the next 4 years. And that's the case that we're going to make over the next few weeks and at convention and until November to the American public. This is the person who is ready to make sure that the American economy is going to be strong, that you are going to be able to support your family, send your kids to a good school, have a vacation, have working people, have jobs. That's what she's going to make the case for. And she's going to make some of that case as she was part of the last administration. And she's going to share with the American public what her vision is for the next 4 years.
Yeah, sure.
Nicole, thank you very much
indeed.
And
Yeah.
usually on Sky
Certainly.
News is around this time, we look at the papers. So let's do that. Let's
I
look
have
at
no
how
idea
the,
who this chick is. God,
British
some
newspapers
fucking-
are handling this
Who
story. And let's look at tomorrow's editions. And the Metro has the rather simple headline, Biden bows out. The Guardian's splash is also, it gets straight to the point, really. Biden quits the race. The Telegraph has an identical headline. The Eye says White House staff had no idea that the announcement was coming, which is quite an interesting take on the whole story. The Times highlights the enormous amount of pressure that the president has been facing from within his own party to withdraw from the election. The FT points out that Mr. Biden has endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, as his successor. Look at the Mail. The Mail suggests that Kamala Harris's selection as the Democratic nominee may not be a foregone conclusion, as a number of Democrats even have been saying on this program. And the Express pictures Mr. Biden in what looks like, well, he's either asleep
dead
or
or
in deep
alive.
thought. And the Star adopts a predictably humorous tone. Their front page reads,
I've got so many
"Sleepy Joe,
songs,
it's
big
time
songs.
for
They're the best
a
ever."
nap." Well, the
Marv
president's
wanted
resignation is
Dream
we've just done
On,
that.
so
It's
I did that
dominating
one.
tomorrow's
and some other
just
stuff.
done that, haven't we? I don't know. I'm just reading something that we've already done. It's late there, even if it's not here.
Bon Jovi, wanted dead or
So,
alive.
James, look,
Oh God,
let's talk about this. It's
good song,
first
though.
of all,
Yeah,
let's
I
put
like
it in
it.
perspective. I mean, this is a historic day and a significant day.
Hugely significant, Mark, in terms of the political landscape, the political ecosystem,
The political
here,
landscape,
and the political direction for the United States.
Slancha.
I was in Milwaukee in the last few days at the Republican National Convention. On the one hand, you have
come
Donald
on,
Trump,
Bon Jovi doesn't suck.
former real estate
Why do you
agent,
hate people? Oh my God, Bon Jovi is the best ever. He's the best hair band that's ever been. Oh my God, you're evil.
Who styles himself as King of Manhattan. Showbiz figures, TV
I go see
celebrity.
Bon Jovi.
On the closing day of that, you had him on stage, introduced by an entertainment wrestler, Hulk Hogan.
Shot to the heart, and you're to blame.
And there was almost a religious air around this man. Largely, of course, because he had been shot. That fed into the kind of atmosphere. But
Slippery
there was a
when
real
wet, you
air of
bastards. Oh my
reverence
God.
and awe amongst that crowd. And it almost felt like St. Donald at times. So that's on the one hand. On the other, you have Joe Biden, one of the most established figures in U.S. political history, not just having been president, who
shot to the
is
heart and
closeted
you're to
away,
blame.
suffering from COVID, self-isolating in
Yeah,
his beach house.
yeah,
We haven't seen him for several days, has been at the heart of this Shakespearean tragedy for several weeks.
The
having been
Shakespearean tragedy.
unfit for office, having collapsed in debate, and simply viewed by his party and others as too old. The man who wouldn't budge, the King Canute of politics, who resisted all entreaties until the likes of George Clooney, Hakeem
Super
Jeffries,
Turbo Death
Chuck
Truck. Oh my
Schumer,
God.
and finally,
Don't let me get out my
Nancy
guitar.
Pelosi, icon of the Democratic
I don't
Party.
even
That
remember
was
one
his
of Bon. I mean, I
A2
know
Nancy
the
in
shots
this
of the heart you
Shakespearean
blame.
tragedy. Ultimately, with that kind of clout
Other than that,
lined up
it's like, yeah,
against
okay,
those kind of opinion formers, he had nowhere to go. And the way he's done it, I think, is
Well, I mean,
entirely in keeping
he seems
with
like a
how
decent guy,
strange
though.
all of this is. You would have thought the 46th president of the United States might address
Saturday
the
Night
nation
Special is
at a
good.
time
Yes,
like this,
Godfather.
not through social media on a Sunday morning.
It's the Saturday Night
thrown
Special.
together.
It does seem
resignation.
like that.
Leonard
doesn't it? Which
Skinner,
raises
man,
the
they're the
question
shit. Come
about
on now.
how this has all happened, about what's been going on in Delaware at his home, and this reporting that we're hearing in one of the British newspapers, certainly, that the White House staff had no idea that he was going to announce this. Now,
Of course he.
find
Of
that
course they
very
did.
difficult to believe on one hand, but then on the other, if the Bidens were as isolated, and it seemed to be, largely down to their family, the family, if they were as isolated as that, then perhaps not so surprising.
Yeah, the Biden, Joe Biden has been surrounded by this inner circle of close colleagues. We're led to believe that those close colleagues, around 3 or 4, his wife, Dr. Joe Biden, clearly key among them. They were together in Rehoboth. He's self-isolating. Yesterday morning, Saturday morning, was when it began to come together. But
Excuse me there, Leprechaun. Isn't that a little bit sexist? His wife? Don't you know she has accomplishments on her own? Oh my God, she's a real human. These people don't even know. They like, oh yeah, you're evil. You want to get married, do you? But Joe Biden's wife is like the whole thing there. You like Biden?
He has very much been.
Do you not see what the fuck you're saying? Of course not, because they get away with it.
Isolated from the party at large, a growing number of them. I mean, nearly 40 who have gone public. There are dozens more who have been leaning on that door and leaning on Nancy Pelosi.
Leaning on that door.
She's been key in all of this. Having spoken to Democrats who'd come out publicly, they said that she led the way in terms of confronting Biden with the reality.
Sodnar,
cutting
this
through
guy's
that
an
inner
Irishman.
circle
What the
to lay before him the polling,
yeah.
private polling that showed where he stood.
Did you say Joe Biden's wife, sir? Did you say that? Are you not oppressing women? Oh my God. But it doesn't matter.
Against Donald Trump, but also showed him where Kamala Harris sat against Donald Trump.
Super
That
turbo
did it for
death
him in
truck.
the end, but
Go
also
fuck
the
yourself.
donors. You know, through
Whatever.
all the arguing about which poll mattered and which
He's
didn't,
as
who's gonna
scatty
win
as
and who
he.
wouldn't.
Oh my God, he's
The donors
scattering.
freezing their donations. That came down to hard dollars, nickels, and dimes. There's no argument about that.
So you think the money dried up, or was threatening?
See, I could
to
probably
dry
do
up?
The money was
something.
being frozen by many donors.
I probably
and,
can't.
You know, he was staring down the barrel of a campaign that was always completely failing, and one that was losing money, and that's no coming back from that in an American election.
And just one last point. Do you expect him then to return to the White House, speak from the White House, and how will this happen? What will the choreography of this be?
Yeah, he has said that he will address the nation at a later date. I think, you know,
All I can say is
he's
the
suffering from COVID. I mean, who knows? He might be in his bedroom.
Tonight or tomorrow?
Well, he's due to meet Netanyahu on Tuesday.
I didn't say that.
Netanyahu addresses Congress on Wednesday. I have to say, my instinct would have been that he would leave the Netanyahu thing, carry on with that, and then make the announcement afterwards. He would not want to give Netanyahu
Shot to the heart,
friend turn foe. He wouldn't want to give Netanyahu the satisfaction of a defunct president. So my guess is that he'll meet Netanyahu. That will carry on because he still needs to prove himself.
Living on a Prayer is a good song.
Wherewithal to continue on.
We went to Florida, all that.
At the very top of his priority list.
6 months. I mean, we're January, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, Bon Jovi's a good-looking guy, and Richie, who's the guitar player? Richie something. They were all right, you know, for a hair band. They were kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah. So bum 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 bum. That one, yeah. Now, I've met a few of these hair bands in the '80s. Bon Jovi probably was not the
Republicans will say,
worst.
well, hang on a minute, why are you missing Netanyahu? You're not fit to be a candidate. And yet you're steering the course of the Middle East conflict right down to a face-to-face meeting with Netanyahu. You'll hear that from the Republicans in grand style in the next few days.
Okay, James, now thank you very much indeed. But we saw the British newspapers, what the UK newspapers are thinking of it. Let's talk to some of the journalists now. Associate editor and columnist for the Financial Times, Stephen Bush joins us, and also the Spectator's economics editor, Kate Andrews. And thank you so much for being with us. And this is not a traditional paper review, as I'm sure you'll imagine, but I do want to get your views. First of all, Stephen, what do you make of it all?
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it, really? Just the timing, watching a presidential party have to navigate the kind of situation which is very common if you're a parliamentary party, where the legislators get panicked and they call for a change of leader. But in a time when they can't do a full primary, with
Poison
the election,
was
okay, yes, we're very far away in terms of how long. You could fit the whole UK election campaign twice over in the time between now and election day, but in the context of American elections, it's a very short amount of time. So it's a fascinating story organizationally, and one, of course, with
Bon
huge
Jovi wasn't so
consequences and
bad.
repercussions for all of us here in Europe. I mean, in many ways, this election is much more consequential.
Going out in a
for
blaze
most
of
people
glory
in the
from
United
Young
Kingdom
Guns
than
too.
the election
Yes.
we just had, or indeed the next election we'll have.
Yeah, and I want to talk about what sort of process you think will or should take place. Kate, just your initial thoughts on
it was all right.
this moment in the American politics.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Remarkable.
That was John Bon
historically
Jovi by himself,
unprecedented.
though.
You have had presidents that have decided not to stand for another term, but by no means so close to the election. As Stephen points out, in American terms, we are now very
Tail
close
gunner, no, I
to
can't.
the election, and you've had 50
not.
states of Democratic primaries where people have
They all be
largely
British. It's
voted
like, oh,
for
these
the
fucking Americans.
Biden-Harris
They think they
ticket.
can do that. Oh my
This
God.
puts the Democratic National Convention in a really tricky place because, of course, the
Brian
Democrats
Adams. You
want
don't
to
like
be able
Brian
to
Adams,
say
Sue? Come
they
on.
are going up against a candidate who rejects the Democratic results of the previous election. But they have a primary
Whatever that
process
song
of their
was.
own, and I think
Everything I
not
do,
just
I
Joe
do for
Biden's
you.
endorsement
That's
of the
pretty
Vice
good. I
President
like that.
Kamala Harris tonight,
And
but
Summer
also that primary
69.
process puts her in a very strong position
I
to
like
be
Brian
the
Adams.
next nominee.
I know Mr. Hemi Vorspeed doesn't, but I like him. He's aight. He's aight.
Stephen, do you think it is a necessity to have a competitive process?
No, I mean, for two reasons. One, for all of the reasons that Kate just outlined. They do have a regular competitive process. It's called the primaries, in which the Biden-Harris ticket was picked by 14 million Democrats, but also the Democratic Party, and indeed no political party in the United States really has a mechanism to select a presidential candidate without a full primary process. That process takes many, many months. There is not enough time between now and when early voting starts in 58 days to have that process. So the only people who can pick a new candidate will be the 3,900 or so convention delegates who are pledged to Joe Biden. They are ultimately only ever going to pick Kamala Harris. So in some ways, it doesn't really matter what process the Democratic Party chooses. It's really hard to see, unless Kamala Harris tomorrow decides to eat a baby, how it won't be her. And so the question for them is, I think, just as simple as, what is the least damaging way for Harris to become the presidential nominee? I think we'll see over the next couple of days various grandees coming out in favor of her. I know some of the papers are suggesting that Obama's withheld endorsement is a sign that he hopes for an open primary, but to be honest, I think it's much more likely than...
Harrison eating a baby. I think she's ate a lot of babies out on her knees. Oh, my God. You're evil, hamster. Thank you.
What we'll see is a drip, drip, drip of American grandees coming out and going, of course it should be Kamala, because they will want to avoid a process that will be very messy on TV, but one which, even if you're someone who doesn't think Harris is the best plausible available candidate, you know that there is no mechanism to get a candidate that's not called Kamala Harris as presidential candidate.
No, it has nothing to... Excuse me.
Yeah, Steve.
Excuse me, Mr. Black Radical here. Doesn't matter who the candidate is. It's the policies. They could run fucking, I don't know, Ronald McDonald. It doesn't matter who they're running. It's the policies that suck. Yeah, can you spell it with me? Suck. S-U-C-K. Suck. But go on and believe your fantasy. We don't give a shit.
Stephen, Kate, if you could hold on for a second, because we've got to talk to Joe Walsh, who is a former Republican congressman and presidential candidate. Joe Walsh, thank you very much for being with us. So are you at all surprised in how this has turned out this weekend?
No, not at all. We live in unprecedented times. The Republican nominee for president is somebody who tried to overthrow an American election 3.5 years ago. He's now the Republican nominee again. The Democratic nominee is old. And Joe Biden has had a very successful first term, but he couldn't make the case that he was able to do his job for another 4 years. And it's all about beating Donald Trump, putting up the strongest Democrat who can do that.
How worried do you think Donald Trump will be by this turn of events?
I think he's scared to death for a couple reasons. Trump is a bully. He's a coward, but he's always had trouble with strong women. He always struggled with Nancy Pelosi. I think that scares him. Look, the whole campaign has been banking on running against Joe Biden. They built their entire campaign to run against 81-year-old Joe Biden. They tried to keep Biden in the race. Kamala Harris is a wild card. So I think they're going to struggle immensely to run against her.
Do you think he will worry about having to debate, if he agrees to a debate, against Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if he did debate her. Again, so much of this is aesthetics and communications. Biden had a very successful first term. He's incapable of communicating that anymore, and we saw that at the debate. Kamala Harris is a strong debater. She's a prosecutor. I can't emphasize this enough. America did not want the Biden-Trump matchup. America really doesn't want these two guys. You throw any new candidate into that mix, like Kamala Harris, we're going to see huge enthusiasm, I think, in this country.
All right.
In one sense, though, I suppose you could argue, the Republicans would argue, or some Republicans would argue, that after their convention in Milwaukee, that is a united party. And, I mean, Donald Trump runs that party.
Completely.
And my other point
my
would be
former
that they are leading in many of the swing states.
Yes, completely. Donald Trump is winning right
Yeah,
now.
it's a bunch
and
of bullshit,
My former
SCA.
party,
You know
the
that.
Republican Party, is completely unified right now.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party is divided. The hope is, right, that a new candidate will unite that party. The other thing we know in America is, as enthusiastic as Trump's supporters are, there are more people in this country who oppose Trump than support him. They just need a reason to be excited and enthused. Biden didn't give that to them. I think Kamala Harris will.
Do you think there should be some sort of process, or do you think it's a question of it would be in the Democrats' best interest to kind of endorse Kamala Harris and get on with the campaign? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there will be a process. What did Kamala Harris say today? Kamala Harris today said, "I'm honored and I'm going to earn the nomination." So Kamala Harris threw her hat into the ring. Any other Democrat is welcome to throw their hat into the ring. I don't think they will, though. The delegates at the convention will decide who the nominee is. Any other Democrat can get in, but I think there's going to be real unification behind Kamala Harris.
Bill Walsh, appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Quick look at the clock, and it is, well, it's just turned 11 o'clock in the UK, and you are watching Sky News. I'm Mark Austin, live from Washington this evening on a momentous day that will certainly reshape the battle for the US presidency in November, and could also, of course, have this decisive impact on the future. About his decision, possibly give more details about that. And he says, "For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me re-elected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and the trust you have placed in me. I believe today, what I always have, that there is nothing America cannot do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America." Here's our US correspondent, James Matthews.
Mr. President, how do you feel?
This was the last day we saw Joe Biden in public, a faltering figure facing increasing questions about his fitness for office. He cut short a campaign trip to Nevada on Wednesday following a COVID diagnosis. It now transpires this was a president leaving the presidential race. From the seclusion of his weekend beach house here in Rehoboth Beach, he's posted a letter on X. It states, "While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely
Yeah,
on
I'm going to be
fulfilling my
taking a
duties
big
as
jump here
president
shortly.
for the remainder
Night
of my
vision.
term."
Thank you.
Joe Biden.
It was a TV debate with Donald
I'm
Trump
ready.
that prompted his
I'm ready.
demise.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if
A stumbling performance
It's
caused fear
the
amongst
beginning,
Democrats
man.
that his frailty would cost them the election.
Where's my ice cream?
Defiantly, Joe Biden resisted increasing calls for him to step down.
he just had a really bad cold.
But as he continued campaigning, senior Democratic figures warned him he would likely lose the White House to Donald Trump, and the party could lose the Senate and House of Representatives with it. In pulling out of the race, Joe Biden has endorsed the woman he chose as vice president 4 years ago, giving his support to Kamala Harris. He has posted on X, "Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. has been America's 46th and oldest president.
What is the message we send to the world if we stand by and we say, we'll let it continue to happen here in this place?"
A voice at the heart of US politics for 5 decades, a face familiar to Americans for so many years. His journey to Washington began here, 2446 North Washington Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania. A modest upbringing that he'd cling to, Scranton Joe. It was the working class man of the people image he used to propel himself upwards.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
Joe
how are you?
Biden's my name.
It would be quick at the start, elected to the Senate in Washington, aged just 30. But the rise would then be slow, nearly 4 decades and 2 failed presidential bids to reach that highest office. Biden's departure complicates the Democrats' succession with November in mind, not to mention the 5 months left in the White House with business unfinished, not least in the Middle East. For all Biden wants an exit untarnished, the timing and circumstances jeopardize the legacy of a lame duck president. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
And James is with me now. This was to have been a contest between two elderly white men.
Why are you
How
so
Americans
evil, SCE?
view
Oh my God.
What has happened today?
It's her
I
past.
think in
You
large
just have
part it will come as
accepted.
something of a relief.
Oh,
Mark.
God.
We have heard for so long that Americans
Oh, my
don't
God.
want this contest, this Stadler-Waldorf contest between two old men. Americans look at a presidential candidate and they want to
Americans
see
look at that.
themselves in the individual who will represent them and
Willie's
carry
Willie.
the country forward.
Stop it.
Polls indicate time after
Oh,
time
my
with
God.
Biden and with Trump that just doesn't add up for your average American. So I think the introduction of an alternative, Kamala Harris, well, it's not going to be anybody who's any younger. We have J.D. Vance on the other side. I think that shakes up the contest. I mean, a contest that needed enlivened, not necessarily by one man getting shot on the one hand and the other on the other side, who could barely string a sentence together at some points. That wasn't necessarily what this contest and American politics at large needed, but it certainly has shaken it up in terms of the individuals, in terms of the spectacle of American politics, but also in terms of the hard politics on which decisions will be made.
But you don't have to look very closely below the surface to know that this is Joe Biden being forced out.
Without question. I mean, this is Joe Biden who has resisted for as long as he could. And, there were gentle entreaties to him. The debate about his age has been ongoing. During that debate with Donald Trump, the party says, wow, that's an individual who's going downhill very quickly. We will lose the election. The polls indicated that. Gently, they tried to encourage him to the exit door, talk to him about his legacy and how, his argument was, let's fight against democracy. They said, well, you're in no position to articulate that argument, but also you're going to lose the election. And where does democracy stand then? So that was the argument. Gentle pushing at the door. Senior figures in the party went to him, Nancy Pelosi and others. They showed him, presented the showings in the private polling. They showed him what donors were saying, and donors were holding back their money. So, you had Pelosi, Schumer, Barack Obama in the wings, didn't say anything publicly, didn't stop his big pal George Clooney telling Biden to take a jump. So they were standing all ranked together against Joe Biden. He was listening to his inner circle for so long, for as long as he could, isolated in his beach house in Rehoboth. We're told that yesterday morning that finally, it got to him, the reality that he wasn't going to beat Trump and that Harris, polls with regard to Harris against Trump were shown to him. And these are the figures that probably did for him in the end.
One of the issues that cropped up, and the 37 Democrat congressmen were worried about what would happen to this place.
Yeah.
And worried about what would happen to the House and the Senate, and as well as the presidency. That was a concern of many.
Yeah. Many polls showed that in House and Senate contests around the country, you had Democrat candidates who were ahead in the polls of their
God, I'm so
rivals,
glad I got some pizza.
and yet in that same place, Biden was behind Trump. So it was a drag. And not just in
God.
terms of his own presidential hopes, but also in House and Senate races around the country. And
Riggs
that was
is
a big
here.
concern, articulated publicly by senior members of the parties. Look, you're going to lose the White House. There's also a real danger that if you don't go now, we'll lose the Senate and the House. To lose the House, that would be to lose the check on Donald Trump.
Look at those average Americans there.
Kamala Harris. She
Look at that.
issued a statement, and it says,
cheese pizza.
"This,
Thank
I'm
you.
honored to have the
I like cheese pizza.
president's endorsement."
And I have to shout out Domino's for, it was last night, right? And I ordered, down the street, and they brought it here, and God, it was hot and fresh. It was delicious. I'm not shitting. It was really good. I don't know what the hell they did, but maybe they put some MSG or something in it. But oh my God, New York style pizza, New York state of mind. Wait, oh my God, It's the wrong stream. It was good. And they got the breadsticks in there, and I got a free pizza because, I'm just a fucking slob, and I order from them all the time. No, really good. Really good. Down on, God damn it, 94 in St. Charles or St. Peter's or something. God, good pizza. Really
And
good.
my intention is to earn and win this nomination over the past year.
After I had to endure all those beers.
She says, talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election. And that is what
there ain't
I will
no steel
continue
reserve.
to do
No,
in the days
God.
and weeks ahead. I will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic
Oh my God,
Party and unite our
you're
nation
giving me
to
flashbacks.
defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025
Thank God enough.
agenda. So promising there to unite the party.
You're
I
hurting
guess
me.
one
Oh
danger
my
here
God.
is if there is a contest, it does the opposite and it divides the party.
It does, and that's the key question: unity.
All
You've got Biden backing Harris. Interesting, and other senior Democrats also throwing their weight behind her.
The hell is
Barack
this?
Obama, not yet. I
Why is
would
it?
at the time
Why-
he didn't
why would
come
they-
to
I don't know.
or he didn't, didn't
Anyway,
back,
Hammer
it's
is
a
starting in
Harris
12 minutes.
Straight away. I mean,
Yeah, but
He's got the Sunday sermon. I'm going to check out,
that would be
boys.
a key consideration for the
I'm gonna
party to go against Harris.
pizza,
And given
something.
everything that she brings in
Shut
terms of
the
key
fuck
Democrat
up. Thank you, you little leprechaun. So, bottom line is, gentlemen and ladies, if you're here, we are living through history right now. 100 years from now, they're going to be saying, oh my God, yeah, Biden dropped out of the thing. Even our grandkids are going to be going, oh my God, granddaddy, did you, oh my God, Trump, he was so evil. Why did you guys take care. I love all of you. Thank you. And I'm going to check out and get some pizza and get ready for Hammerhand in 11 minutes. All right, you fucks. See you later. Thank you. And God bless. Bye.